Week 1 has officially passed us, and entering Week 2, Michigan jumped from 8th to 4th in the AP poll, and they also jumped from 6th to 5th in the coaches poll. The Wolverines winning 51-7 over Colorado State, looking elite on defense and better than I thought on defense. The offense had a lot of issues in the red zone, but still was able to make some solid plays, even had an explosive play off a screen pass from Roman Wilson. Michigan right now is certainly a team that is staying steady or trending up. They are not trending down at this current moment. Colorado State, nonetheless, was a bad football team, and Hawaii, if I'm going to be straight up with you, is just as bad, if not and more likely worse than Colorado State is. But still, it's another game for the Wolverines to play, and the more games a team plays, the greater sample size you have, the more accurate predictions and thoughts you can have on said teams. So there's still a reason to preview this game and give my prediction. It's another testing ground for Michigan, and they're using it as a testing ground. They're starting quarterback J.J. McCarthy this game instead of Cade McNamara, which according to Cade, quote, took him off guard. A lot of people are viewing that as complaining. And I mean, competition is competition, and I get it. And, you know, competition's a normal part of the sport, and he was the starter from last season. So in a certain sense, he's wondering, well, I brought you to 12-2. Why should I be, you know, being pushed in a certain sense? And one, you should always be pushing yourself. And I think Cade is a competitor, and I think Cade knows that. And I don't think that there's a right or wrong answer for starting either at QB. I think that if McCarthy is as mentally tough and has the football IQ of Cade with his own physical abilities, then absolutely start JJ. But we've already went over that. The quarterback battle's interesting. I think a lot of people are viewing it to be bigger than it is. And by that I mean with Michigan's system in place, there are a plethora of other things, like the offensive line, the run game, play calling, which sometimes has been abysmal offensively in the Jim Harbaugh era, and how well the defense does. Because of Michigan's style of football, the quarterback is always the most important, or one of the most important positions for any team. But I don't want to act like if Michigan starts JJ or if they start Cade, then the probability of Michigan winning the Big Ten or going to the playoff drastically changes depending on who you start. I don't think that's really appropriate nor realistic to talk about. But anyway, I think I've talked for long enough, and that was just a little bit of my thoughts on the QB battle, which is going to be played out in this game. JJ obviously got some playing time last game. Cade will probably get some playing time this game. So first and foremost, let's jump into this and do the game preview. This, strangely, is a night game. The game starts at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Big Ten Network. I have absolutely no clue as to why this is a night game. Why? You couldn't have used a night time slot for a game like a more important game? Hawaii's Michigan's worst opponent by miles and miles. Vanderbilt put up 63 on this Hawaii squad. Now, Vanderbilt's much better than they were last year, and that game was probably a fluke because it's going to be hard for anyone to put 100 up on any team without running up the score, you know. But it's 8 p.m., it's a night game. Michigan far and away is better at every position. They have more raw talent. They're far more developed. They have a better coaching staff. Hawaii wouldn't even pay June Jones a small in college football terms. I think they wouldn't even pay $1 million or a few million for June Jones to come back and be their head coach. So they settled on Timmy Chang, who has one of the smallest salaries, I believe, for a college football head coach. Hawaii's football program is an absolute disaster. We'll talk more about this in a few minutes. Michigan is given a 99.7, make it a 100% chance to win this game, according to ESPN's FPI. You should never overlook a team. I'm not a player or a coach, though. Players and coaches should never talk about opponents the way that I and media people and analysts or fans talk about teams. They should never do that, because overlooking an opponent is a cardinal sin. You never do that. But I'm not on the team. And if there's any members of the Michigan team watching this video, play your heart out against Hawaii. Play your A game. Always, no matter who the opponent is. But Michigan might as well. This is basically a guaranteed win. Again, this is a testing board for Michigan to use to help develop their players further, to grease the gears, to change the oil. This is an opportunity for Michigan to further improve themselves, to find mistakes and holes so that they can fix them before they start Big Ten play. And honestly, after how Iowa looked, and even how Maryland looked, Michigan might not have a real test until the Michigan State game. And I don't necessarily, part of me doesn't like that, because I want to know who my team is earlier than later, but also that gives Michigan plenty of time to continuously improve while still being possibly undefeated. But I'm not underestimating Iowa on the road. I do not care that they couldn't score a touchdown against an FCS opponent. Think about 2016 when Iowa beat the Wolverines. They lost at home to an FCS North Dakota State team that year, and they still beat Michigan at home. So interesting to think about. The Wolverines are favored by a whopping 51 points. It started out at like 46. So the spread has been growing and growing. This is a huge number, and everyone is placing money on Michigan to cover. And why shouldn't they? Again, Vanderbilt beat this team by 53 points. They went into Hawaii, and the score was 21-10 at the half. And then Vanderbilt scored 42 unanswered points. Vanderbilt had 601 yards against this Hawaii team. Vanderbilt's quarterback had more rushing yards than passing yards. Mike Wright did. Vanderbilt in total had 400 rushing yards. So Michigan, in a certain sense, by the transitive property, which isn't great, but in theory, going transitive here, Michigan should have 1,000 total yards and beat this team by 100, which again, not how football works. Michigan probably could do that if they wanted to, but in the fourth quarter at minimum, you're going to see a lot of third stringers out there. And Hawaii will probably play better than they did week 1 against week 0 against Vanderbilt, if we're being honest here. But this is a strange game. It's at night, despite the massive mismatch between these two teams. Michigan's number 4, Hawaii's unranked. Hawaii's already had 2 losses. They play 13 total games. Michigan's favored by 51 points. Can someone tell me in the comments below if there's been any game in recent memory where any team was favored by that amount of points? Georgia was favored by, I think, around 40-something against Missouri last year. They were favored around 40, definitely in the 30s. I don't remember the last time a team was favored by 51 points. I do not remember the last time that happened. So that's absolutely insane. That's absolutely crazy. And in my opinion, we'll get to my prediction, but this game, Michigan being a top 4 team, I have them at number 4 myself, so the AP poll and I actually agree on this one. If Michigan is a top 4 team, this game should be over effectively by the first quarter or middle second quarter, with just how atrocious Hawaii is in every way. And to get a mental picture, close your eyes. Imagine your mid-tier, below average 4-star player, because that's what Michigan's average player is. And then to just make this an even better image, imagine Michigan football, what you think of when you think of Michigan football. Some 5 stars, some 4 stars, 3 stars. Think of big, physical guys, offensive linemen who, when I looked at Michigan's offensive line in person against Colorado State, it's like, this line is huge. Big physical tight ends, good wide receivers, great running backs, and a good quarterback. And a D-line that, frankly, was also big but fast, too. A coverage unit that was good. Imagine all these things in your mind, plus the big house, at night, under the lights. And then Think of a team who last year in 2021 couldn't have any fans in the stands, where they're not even top 100 in total team talent, and they lost to Vanderbilt by 53. Now put those two teams on the field, and the team with, the big house is at home, obviously. Who do you think's going to win? Well, that basically answered the question. It's a rhetorical question. Michigan's ranked number 5 in ESPN's FPI. Hawaii's ranked dead last at 131st in ESPN's FPI. Michigan's the nation's 14th most talented team. Hawaii is the nation's 104th most talented team. Yeah, moment of silence for Hawaii. And the Wolverines are the 6th most efficient college football team. The Warriors are the 128th most efficient college football team. So Michigan here shouldn't play Hawaii close at all. They shouldn't. And I guess my prediction is coming earlier in this video than it normally would, but there's not much to talk about in regards to the score, much like last week's game. There's more so to talk about revolving around what Michigan's going to do, or what Michigan should use this game to do to further improve their team and learn new lessons, learn who their team is. That's what Michigan should be doing in this game, testing new things, and that's what they are going to do. Quarterback J.J. McCarthy is going to start this game. J.J. McCarthy last year, the Jim Harbaugh used his red shirt, actually. So he's a sophomore this season. McCarthy last year had above a 150 passer rating. He had, I think, over or around 100 rushing yards. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, 124 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns, 5 passing touchdowns, 516 passing yards with only 2 interceptions, a 152.3 passer rating. And against Colorado State, he went 4 of 4 for 30 yards, 163 passer rating, and he had 3 attempts for 50 rushing yards, one of which was a 20-yard rushing touchdown. They're starting him. J.J. McCarthy reportedly has a 4.5 40-meter dash, which means he is faster than all but 3 NFL QBs. And I'm not saying that I'm buying into this, or saying that he's an NFL QB when I make that comparison. I'm just saying what I've heard. Jim Harbaugh himself said it. And J.J. McCarthy was very talented coming out of high school. Very talented. 5-star, listed as a pro style by 24/7 Sports, but he had that dual threat capability that was mentioned several times. It was showcased against Colorado State. It looks like he's gotten even better with his legs, and he still is as good as ever with his arms, despite, the injury that he sustained in spring/winter, the strain that he had. Michigan's going to start him, and they're going to see how it goes. And J.J. McCarthy, the question with him has never been raw talent. His ceiling is higher than Cade. The question is, can he lead the team the same? Does he have the same respect among his teammates in tough moments where, Cade against Nebraska, against Ohio State, he threw 1 pick in each of those games, and he made mistakes. But in the end, he did everything. He did everything to help his team. Yes, there were other parts. It's not like he carried his team in those games, but he still did the job. That was Cade's theme. He did the job. He did what he could all the time, and he's the reason, along with Eric All, that Michigan's season was saved against Penn State. He was the reason that Michigan's offense was humming against Michigan State, because Michigan really struggled to run the ball that game. What they didn't struggle to do was pass the football, which part of that was because MSU's secondary. The other part was because Cade played one of his better games passing the ball that game. Cade has done what has been asked of him. He plays his hardest. He's a leader. He has high football IQ. Makes good decisions overall. That's been the question with JJ, who sometimes tries to do too much and ends up making a mistake, or sometimes has silly green type of player mistakes because he's new, was a freshman last year. If he can eliminate his mistakes and his talent stays the same, or more likely than not continues to progress, then absolutely J.J. McCarthy should start. And I said in the beginning that I thought J.J. McCarthy would win the job. I was wrong in the sense of that I thought he would win it outright, but if he wins it after this game or is the starter by the middle of the season, I'll also give myself some credit there. I think J.J. McCarthy is growing to be the better quarterback, and I think that while I don't necessarily believe he gives Michigan a much higher ceiling than Cade does, because there's more positions on the field than just QB. And I think that Cade, regardless of who wins the job this year, still has, he still has veterancy on his side. JJ gives Michigan, that it gives them the QB run element that Michigan has been. They had a little bit under Patterson, but they didn't always utilize it. And JJ is just much better and much more talented than Shea Patterson, and mentally superior, I believe, in every way. And that's not a slight to Patterson. That's praising J.J. McCarthy and the athlete and player that he is. For Hawaii, watch out for Dedrick Parson. Dedrick Parson had a pretty good game against Vanderbilt, which was Hawaii's best opponent thus far. He has rushed for 111 yards so far, 2 touchdowns, averaged 4 yards per carry. In 2021, he had 618 rushing yards for 5.3 yards per carry and 8 rushing touchdowns. His best season was with Howard, the Howard Bison, where he had 725 rushing yards for nearly 6 yards a carry and 9 rushing touchdowns. If Hawaii's best player, which again, I have not done tons and tons of research into Hawaii, but just by briefly checking them out, Dedrick Parson is probably the player to watch if Hawaii gets anything going on offense, which they will need to in order to, even make it competitive for a quarter, if we're being honest here. So watch out for Dedrick Parson. He's a good player, good at running back. And for Michigan, J.J. McCarthy, and not just him, but, Cade, if Cade gets playing time. Watch out for those two, because this is where this game is. I'm not going to diminish Hawaii into saying it's a tryout, but this really is a testing board for Jim Harbaugh and the program to figure out the QB situation, figure out tight end, offensive line, wide receiver, just smooth the surface, smooth the rough concrete floor. The concrete is there. It's beautiful, it's solid, it's strong, but smooth it out and make it even nicer than it is. That's what Michigan should be doing for this game against Hawaii. And that leads me to my prediction. Number 4, Michigan versus Hawaii. This should be a blowout from start to finish. And I'm tabbing it 73-7. My prediction for Colorado State versus Michigan was 70-10. Realizing Michigan's offense, they still have some things to work out on, and they're probably going to, pull away in the 4th. I'm thinking that Michigan isn't going to score 90 points like anticipated, but they should score in the 70s against Hawaii, or at least the 60s. And if they don't, I honestly would be disappointed there. Michigan's offense will throttle Hawaii. Absolutely throttle them. The struggles that they had last week, which are legitimate and should be concerns, because against Big Ten opponents, they will become much bigger. The wounds will be more open. But Hawaii's defense is even worse than Colorado State's, and same for the offense. So Michigan's offense will break the Warrior defense. J.J. McCarthy, a prediction that is outside of the score. He will start this game, which is expected, but then after this, he will secure the number 1 spot. Absolutely secure it, because of his performance in this game. He will have a great game too. Whereas Cade had moments where he looked mediocre. Of course, he did his job, and I respect him as a player. If Cade wins this job, you will hear no complaining from me. And you will hear only support from me because of what he has done for this program. See, I think the proper opinion for Michigan fans to have is support whoever wins the job. Do not hate on Cade. Or, even though I haven't seen this, but I bet it's possible, don't hate on JJ. Don't hate on anyone. These are our players. None of our players from this team, what I have seen thus far, are bad. None of them. None of them are criminals. None of them deserve hate of any kind. It will not be tolerated. Whoever wins this job will be supported. I just think that after Cade's performance in the spring game and against Colorado State, I think that JJ will start, against Hawaii, as Jim Harbaugh said, but he will win the job and secure the number 1 spot with his performance. And this game will be over before it even starts. The minute Michigan takes the field, they will more likely than not have won. And I didn't say they will have won because, again, you got to play the game, and nothing is guaranteed. Absolutely nothing. In sports, in life, nothing is guaranteed. Nothing. And although I'm not on the team, so I can say something's guaranteed and it's not my fault if Michigan ends up losing, I'm not going to do that because, in all honesty, nothing is guaranteed. And Michigan should treat this game against Hawaii like the game against, like how they treat their game against Penn State or Nebraska. I'm not going to say Michigan State or Ohio State because those are rivalries. Those might be a little different, but Nick Saban and his players at Alabama and Kirby Smart and his players at Georgia treat every game like a game that you have to play your A game and that you must win and play your best. So having that mindset is something I want to see Michigan have. And for Hawaii, this program is a huge dumpster fire. Absolute dumpster fire. And I expect nothing from them this Saturday. Nothing. They're going to fall to 0-3. Their talent gap will kill them on offense and on defense. Allowing 400 rushing yards to Vanderbilt is a war crime. That is a war crime. Not even most FCS schools would allow 200 or 300 rushing yards to Vanderbilt. And maybe Vanderbilt is solid this year. I mean, Clark Lee had confidence in SEC media days, and SEC media actually gave him some respect in preseason polls. For some reason, he even got a first place vote. So I don't know. Vanderbilt's, they're 2-0. They're probably going to exceed last year's win total and improve. Mike Wright actually looks like a solid quarterback. So it's not a slight to Vanderbilt, but Vanderbilt's been historically bad. I don't think Vanderbilt's a top 25 team, and they throttled Hawaii. Scoring 63 points against anyone is impressive. It is. Against anyone. That's why when, I don't know really where to go with that, but Michigan beating Colorado State 51-7 was more, it was honestly a mark that Michigan was a great team, because great teams, they win close games and they beat good opponents, but they also throttle little guys too. Often when a team that's ranked high in the preseason struggles against some of those smaller teams, you get a feeling and a sense and almost an intuition that they're not as good of a team as, they say. Like Texas A&M struggling against Sam Houston State is an example. The Warriors will probably go 0-13 or something close to that. They are just that bad. And I think Michigan's going to test a lot of new things. They'll probably mostly have third stringers out on the field by the fourth quarter. It'll be a shellacking, and Michigan will pump up their rankings because winning these big games, even against inferior opponents, gets you all kinds of love from the media. So Michigan, just win this game, test out new things, and stay away from the rat poison that you will be fed after beating Hawaii by a large amount of points. And that's all I have to say for this video. If you liked it, make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, click the notification bell, and comment your thoughts on this game down below. Will you be attending? Will you be disappointed if Michigan scores less than 70 points? Do you think Michigan will get close to scoring 100 points? Tell me your thoughts down below. And if you're listening to Spotify or on Spotify, make sure to follow the channel. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys around. Bye.